Welcome to the AT Parenting Survival Podcast, where you get help and guidance through the chaos of parenting a child with anxiety or OCD. This show is for educational purposes and is not intended to replace the guidance of a qualified professional. Here's your host, child therapist, Natasha Daniels.
Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of the AT Parenting Survival Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about how to help anxious kids through stories and books. And really, a child with any struggle can really learn and build skills through stories, through narratives. There are a lot of fantastic books out there that are teaching tools that your kids will be interested in because it's a story. It's a good story. So today I have author and psychologist Dr. Amy Neeren joining me, who is a clinical psychologist and author of a children's chapter book series, super cute, which we're going to talk about, called Nellie and Knots. And she's got two different books so far out on Nellie and Knots. They're both called Nellie and Knots. And we're going to talk about how to use books and other creative outlets to help our kids through their struggles. But before we get started, a couple of announcements. First of all, I want to thank NoCD for sponsoring this episode. NoCD offers affordable, effective, convenient therapy, and they're available in the U.S. and outside of the U.S. And you can schedule your free 15-minute consultation to see if NoCD is the right fit for you and your child. Just go to treatmyocd.com. That's treatmyocd.com, and I will leave a link in the show notes as well. I also want to This is kind of an appropriate podcast episode to make an announcement. And it's like Echo was like, did you hear that? I don't know if it picked it up on the mic, but Echo just gave me that little sound that it has an announcement. And that's kind of appropriate because I actually have an announcement. I haven't really talked about it so far on the podcast, but you'll be hearing me talk about it more, that I have a new book coming out. It's coming out on February 21st. So I have a Crushing OCD workbook for kids. It is aged for kids between 8 and 12, but publishers have to really narrow down an age bracket. I actually think it's pretty appropriate depending on the cognitive level of your child for a 6 or 7-year-old. And I think on the flip side, I think it can go up to 13, 14, 15. It is, I purposely did it so that it was pretty universal skills and not overly babyish, that I think it can resonate with any child in that broad range. But I took all the skills that I've taught kids in my therapy practice for over 2 decades now, and I have taken all of that and put it in a workbook. Because when I'm working with kids in person, there's a system that I'm following. Like I'm building their skills one building block at a time. And when I wrote this workbook, I wanted to walk a child through that, through the workbook. And so it really is a parallel experience to what a child would experience if they were with me in therapy. And that's my ultimate goal, is to give tools that can reach the globe, reach people who don't have access to therapy, reach people who have barriers to therapy, reach people who are in therapy and want to supplement those tools they're learning, reach therapists who want tools for their practice so that there's clinically sound tools out there to help people with OCD, in particular our little kids. So I hope that you find it helpful. I do have a special book launch offer, which I've been a little nervous about doing because it's a bit crazy, but I am gifting people who purchase the pre-sale of my book before it comes out. You can get my Crushing OCD course for kids and teens for free, which is crazy because that course is $127, and it's really like the video version of this book. But there are 12 kids and teens that help me teach that course. They talk about their own experiences. They talk about how they're using the tools. And so there is that validation piece that I think is really cool about the course. There's worksheets as well that are different than what's in the book. And they are actually a beautiful supplement to each other. And, to get the buzz and to really give this book a really good chance at thriving, I'm like, okay, I'm going to just give my course for free. So if you purchase the book, and you can buy it now on Amazon, I'm pretty sure, I don't know, I haven't really looked, but I'm pretty sure it's probably on pre-sale at other locations as well. But you can go to Amazon. I'll leave a link in the show notes, or you can go to natashadaniels.com/OCD workbook, and there'll be a link there as well. When you purchase the book, just email us the receipt at atparentingsurvivalhelp@yahoo.com. That's atparentingsurvivalhelp@yahoo.com. And just show us the receipt, and we will give you a coupon code to enroll in that class for free. Now, here's a caveat. If you've already purchased that course, this is not, a retroactive type of thing. This is just one of those like flash deals that is for people who have not enrolled in that course. So I hope that you take advantage of it, because I think it's a really powerful duo, the course and the workbook together. And I probably won't have this going on for too long, because it makes me nervous, because it's giving my beautiful in-depth course away for free, which is going to be a very brief thing. So take advantage of it while it's available. You can go to natashadaniels.com/OCD workbook to get more of the details, to get the link, or just go directly to Amazon. You can type in Natasha Daniels or Crushing OCD Workbook. It will pop up, and just email us and we will get you that coupon code. So take advantage of that. And let's jump into my conversation with Dr. Amy Neeren. I hope that you find it helpful. I think that she brought a lot of interesting ways to talk to kids about anxiety and using books as a tool. So without further ado, here is Dr. Amy. Well, I want to welcome Dr. Amy Neeren to the show. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Oh my God, thanks so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, I love that we're going to talk about this topic today. I think it's so important for parents to hear lots of different ways to help their anxious kids.
Mm-hmm.
And today we're going to jump in and we're going to talk about how to use books, kind of the technical term like bibliotherapy, stories, narratives to help anxious kids. But before we get started, I just want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to my audience and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Amy Neeren. I am a licensed clinical psychologist, and I've been in private practice for years, working with kids, teenagers, and adults who have anxiety and depression, all different kinds of things going on that can be comorbid, can coexist with different kinds of anxiety disorders. I've been a professor teaching at different colleges, all about clinical psychology, the treatment and the diagnosis. I also work for pharmaceutical companies doing currently right now in charge of clinical trials to help different types of psychiatric and psychological disorders. Also a children's book author and working on an adult novel.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's really fun. And that for anxiety, I will say writing is a really wonderful therapeutic tool.
Yeah.
It's a really great tool. And a lot of people, I always say, people with anxiety are some of the most brilliant screenwriters and playwriters and just creators. There is a lot of correlation between having anxiety and being a super creative person.
Yeah, 100%.
So I would always tell kids that, use the anxiety, use the things that you come up with, and you can come up with these really fabulous stories.
Yeah, because your brain is like a great horror show writer.
It really is. It's like the best one. You
Yeah.
can come up with these scenarios and people are like, what? And you're like, what do you mean? Isn't that like what you think about?
Yeah, it's true. But I do feel like, my kids are so creative and are, starting to tap into writing too, because I feel like that's a great tool too. It's very therapeutic
It really is. Yeah.
to craft a story,
Mm-hmm. And there's something about getting the words out on paper, just getting whatever's inside of you out. It really is. There's something about it. I know there's research on it too. So yeah, just for your audience, I think that's another really unique tool to get some of your kids to do. Not necessarily a part of therapy, just as a part of just the whole gestalt of kind of, treating distress.
Yeah, and getting them to tap into stuff early. And so you might start with what we're going to talk about today, as far as reading books about people's stories that kind of incorporate the struggles But even just fantasy, I think, like my son currently, who's 14, all three of my kids have some sort of flavor of anxiety or OCD, and so do I. But I'm finding that both of them, my two youngest, really are starting to love to write. He writes like
Fabulous.
these, he actually does write like horror kind of sci-fi.
Oh,
So it's
how cool.
not related to his anxiety or OCD at all, but just that creative outlet,
Yep.
to channel that energy in a positive way has been really, really helpful.
That's
My oldest
fantastic. I love
daughter,
hearing that.
yeah, my oldest daughter's into art, and I feel like just another creative.
Yes.
She's actually in college for art right now. It's just another outlet.
Amazing. It's fantastic. It's such
Yeah,
a gift. As I
yeah,
get older, I really feel like the arts and creating, whatever that may be, painting, drawing, writing, cooking, anything can be creative. Just this
yeah,
is an outlet to get your angst out.
yeah. And sometimes kids may not know that, and we need to invite the opportunities. I feel like as parents, it's like, like poo-poo platters in like, Chinese restaurants. I
Yes,
feel like we
yes,
have to like provide a poo-poo platter. I don't not
yes,
think of that
absolutely.
term.
Because they won't know necessarily. Yeah,
Yeah, like just give them a plethora of choices to get their feet wet and then not. I think sometimes as parents we get a little overzealous about they're going to be an artist now, or they're going to be into acting, or they're going to write, or I'm going to, and we can kind of squash the soul out of it by making it a task.
right.
But I think giving our kids the avenue to explore, like with my son, I'm like, how about I get you a keyboard for your iPad so you can write easier on the couch? Like just giving them the tools to be like, here's an opportunity, and
Absolutely.
where will it go?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And not like, this is graded or anything like that, but this is just a way for you to kind of cope with the world and your thoughts and your anxiety. And it really is, it really could be life-saving actually. Yeah.
So let's talk about different ways to help anxious kids in maybe like non-typical ways, out of the
Okay.
box ways to help kids. In what ways do you help kids with books?
I think the biggest way that books can help, and speaking for myself too, even as an adult, a middle-aged female, reading about people's struggles, reading about someone like myself who's actually, struggling, but they turn out okay. They've had hard times, they've had tragedy, or they're dealing with, a myriad of mental health symptoms, depression, anxiety, and eating disorder, whatever it is. But reading about people that have this condition, they, have gone through rough patches, but they're thriving. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. So it's sort of like I think that's really helpful. And that's, part of what led me to start writing. When I was a kid, I was a highly anxious kid. And at that time, my parents didn't really know, it wasn't really talked about, thank goodness, like it is now. I think the field is doing a really good job of trying to reduce the stigma so kids feel comfortable and adults talking about their mental health issues, whereas it wasn't when I was a kid, really. I think
Hmm.
my parents tried, but they didn't get me into the right therapy. But I think I'm going on a tangent, but I think as a kid, I would have loved like a book series or something where I'm like, oh, this kid like is having thoughts like me, and this kid is like knocking on the headboard, like so like their parents won't die, or like doing these things,
Yeah.
oh, so I'm not like the only one, right? I think it can be so therapeutic to see themselves, kids in books, or see anyone struggling with something and watch the ways in which they tackle that. Not necessarily get rid of it, just learn to live with it.
Yeah. It's packaged, I think, in a way that is just more digestible for kids when they hear a story, like they immerse themselves into a story and it sounds like them. It's just there's so many books that don't sound like an anxious child that
Yeah.
to realize they're not alone, not because people are saying you're not alone, there's other people who have this, but they're reading it and it's naturally weaved into a character, I think can be like so therapeutic.
I think so too. I really think it's important. I think reading or even watching the same kind of thing, like movies, or I don't think there's any TV shows that I could think of off the top of my head. But I just think, and doing something creatively to really engross yourself with whatever that is. You can find creativity anywhere. I mean,
Yeah.
it can literally be cooking, baking, coloring, drawing, painting, finding creative ways to move your body, exercising, dance is so creative. I mean, just all of the arts, I think, aren't necessarily integrated into sort of like the empirical treatments for anxiety, which of course they're super effective. But having these adjunctive, these like add-ons to just overall mental well-being. Exercise is huge. Not necessarily when you're in a lot of distress. It's sort of this prophylactic, like preventative measure. Like if you're always moving, you're always doing something that can help in sort of the long-term treatment in a lot of these things that we see with kids and teens.
Yeah. And sometimes kids don't want to talk about things directly, or they don't want that direct help. And so what are these ancillary ways that we can kind of creep in and help them,
Mhm.
tap into their creativity and teach them actually about anxiety in more passive ways? I know with my daughter, when she was really little, I would do kind of like narrative, almost like narrative therapy. I don't know what you'd actually call it, but
That's super
she would
cool.
respond better. Like she would be anxious about going swimming. I remember like swim lessons were a nightmare for both my kids. I
Oh,
probably spent like easily $20,000 on swim
oh
lessons.
my God.
And then we got a pool eventually, and then they just learned to swim because it was like there. They never learned how to
Hmm.
swim really in swim class, but she was so anxious and she would get like diarrhea, like she couldn't
Yeah,
get out, like she would, and she
I
was like
bet.
4 at the time. And I remember like driving to swim class and just being like, there once was a girl named, and I'd actually use her name, I wasn't even trying to disguise the fact that it was her. And I would tell her this whole story about, that she was scared and she would get to the very edge and and I'd highlight all her fears, like she was worried she was going to go to the bottom or that her coach wasn't going to catch her. And I would like build up and I'd have like this brave, part where she was able to jump in, the fictional part actually.
Well, it ended up eventually
It did
being
eventually,
nonfiction.
but it was
Yeah.
fictional for a long time. And it was really cute because, like, by the third time we were driving, she would just, this little voice in the back seat says, "Tell me the story,"
Oh,
and she
that's so
just wanted to
cute. They
hear.
do listen, of course. I mean,
Yeah,
and as a
she wanted,
parent, you're their hero. I
yeah,
mean,
that
they're
she
not going to tell
wanted
you
that,
that.
right. And she just wanted the empowerment. Like, she just wanted to hear about her as a character, but being more empowered. And then, fiction, reality followed fiction, then she was able to do it and we were able to tweak this story. But I do feel like, we don't always have to talk to our kids directly about anxiety. We can always
Right.
be, we can talk to them through stories. We can talk through puppet play when they're little.
Yes, puppet play is great.
Yeah.
Acting out scenes. And I think the biggest thing is telling them like it's totally normal. Anxiety is like, one of the top 7 normal emotions. Like if you're not a robot, like we're all human beings, we all have anxiety. We all have varying levels of anxiety. This doesn't make you weird. You just have high levels of it, and this person does too, and I did too. And I'll tell you about a time when I was a kid. Well, this is what I would do with my kids. Let me tell you about a time when mommy was anxious, which was, well, 99% of the time. So let's talk about some events and how you can do things in spite of it. The idea of it, I'm sure in your practice, isn't necessarily to get rid of it first, because that's not going to work, right? If I say, hey, like, I'm so nervous about this presentation, what can I do to calm myself down? And I mean, that's great, but then there's too much pressure focused on the getting rid of the anxiety. So it's like, I always think the biggest thing is like saying, you have this anxiety, but you can do it too. You do this thing, and then eventually over time, it tends to decrease through the repetitive exposure. So stories about yourself, about loved ones, about people they look up to. I think it's great to like read and learn about people they look up to, because now people are coming out and saying, hey, you know what, guy, you know what, kids? Like I struggle with this too as a kid, or I struggle with this now. All these athletes,
Yeah.
actors, actresses, people that kids would look up to. So they don't feel like there's something wrong with them, you know?
Yeah. And I do appreciate that that is becoming more of the norm. Child
Yeah.
Mind Institute does a really good campaign each year where they will have videos of famous people talking about their mental health struggles. And I feel like that's just so validating.
It's huge. It's huge. I mean,
Yeah.
it's even huge for me as an adult. So imagine the impact on a child, their
Yeah.
mind. Like, wow, this person, Simone Biles, or I'm just thinking
Hmm.
of recent recently, right?
Yeah.
Look, she struggles too, and she's an Olympic athlete.
Yeah. I always think of Ryan Reynolds because he's my favorite actor.
I
He's like
love him.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
there's so many.
yeah.
There's so
He's
many
like,
people. I mean, we're all humans. I mean, it doesn't
right.
matter. And I think the biggest message to kids is like, it's not going to stop you. It doesn't have to stop you.
Hmm.
You can live a very meaningful, purposeful, wonderful, fabulous life with it. Is it irritating? Does it blurb up at certain points? Yes, and that's really annoying. Doesn't mean you can't do all these fabulous and amazing things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a great message to convey to our kids is, you can have your anxiety and you can have a full life and you can
A
do
million
great
percent.
things. And the goal isn't really just to eradicate anxiety because that's impossible, but it's how do you choose the things that you want to be passionate about and choose the things that you want to do, and not let anxiety hold you back. And
Exactly. And it does tend to, and this, over time, it does tend to go down. If you're doing the same thing you're afraid of with the anxiety, you just kind of pack it up, bring it along, and it does over time tend to get quieter.
yeah, yeah, especially if
You
you,
know,
aren't catering to the avoidance that it wants you to do, for sure.
yes. Well, avoidance is like the worst,
Yeah. Yeah.
even though it's the easiest. It's like what everyone wants to do.
Hmm.
Just gonna make everything worse in the long run.
So you wrote two books for kids, kind of back to back. Like one came out one year and then the other one came out the next year. They're really cute, Nellie and Knots. What
Thank you.
made you what made you decide to write two kids' books? Maybe two.
So yeah, yeah. So I was a highly, highly anxious kid, like super, super anxious about everything. All that I think it's like it was in my marrow, my bone marrow. I was just born an anxious person. And growing up, I mean, I went to like play therapy. It was a different time, so there wasn't like CBT, there wasn't
Yeah.
ERP, there wasn't
Hmm.
there wasn't that stuff, and it would manifest with headaches, migraines, belly aches, leaving birthday parties early, being scared of school, scared I'm not going to sleep, staying up at night, worrying about exams, everything that you can think of, like petrified of school, petrified I wasn't going to do well, petrified my parents, something was going to happen to someone that I love, like
Hmm.
in every area. And I think that I would have loved, like there was some point a while ago, and I'm like, and I love working with kids. I love it. And I would work with kids and they'd be like, well, why am I the only one? Like, there's no one
Hmm.
else in my class like this. How come so-and-so is fine giving a presentation? Or how come so-and-so is fine? Like swimming's huge actually for little kids. That's a big
Yeah.
phobia. Now I'm like picturing my daughter with like her little pink bikini, like stomping around because she would not go in the pool for a year. So the oppositional behavior comes too with anxiety,
Yeah.
which but I would see kids all the time and I just want to give them a big hug and just say you're not alone and I had this too. And wouldn't it be great to have like a kid series where there could be this great, this character that is, has several anxiety disorders, highly anxious, but that's not what defines her. She's a great friend, she's a great daughter, she loves pets, she's athletic, she loves to dance. She's a well-rounded human, which any single person with anxiety is. I wanted to send the message to kids that they're not alone. There's so many people out there with this, like way more than you know or would ever realize. And you don't have to be defined by it. And you can face it. You can get a really great therapist. I also wanted to destigmatize the process of going to therapy. So I tried to make a psychologist, Dr. Niederberger,
Yeah, I love that. I thought
that
that was
friend,
really helpful.
based on this like guy I knew from grad school. I hope he has like, he'll be like, oh, I hope
I
he's
was
been,
wondering, I
I
was like,
mean,
this is definitely
it's
coming
like a
from
real
something.
name, Dr. Niederberger. So this poor
Really?
man does not even, yeah, he does not even know that he's in there, but
That is funny.
he'll be delighted to know that he's helping kids destigmatize that process. That the therapist is really on your side. They're, to gain those supports. You can be honest with your friends. Like she develops this sparkle squad that like helps people and they end up helping her. So I really, that's why I wanted to make kids feel less alone, feel less stigma about having anxiety or anxiety disorder or disorders. Because oftentimes they come with friends. The disorders are friends,
Totally.
um, and which are annoying to the host, the person. But yeah, and I know anxious kids do like it, and show them that like my character has a lot of. She's funny, she's quirky, she's goofy, she does a lot of fun stuff, and she kind of learns over. I'm hoping to write more, but she learns like this is annoying. Yeah, for sure. Like we're not going to pretend it's not annoying, but I'm not going to let this stop me. I can do all these great things, and I can kind of use it. I can use this as in like a powerful way at some point.
And I love that. And I love that like it's just not one dimensional. It's like she's got this whole personality and there's so much more about her and about the story than just anxiety. So it's veiled in a way, that you can give
Yep.
this to an anxious child and it's just a book. It doesn't say, this is like, you know, an anxiety workbook, or, it's just a
Right.
story about her layers of anxiety and her friends and her interactions with adults and her therapist. And it's very normalizing, I think. And you hit on a lot of really common anxiety themes, I think, in both books that really help. You're going to reach someone. I feel like
Yeah,
one of
yeah.
those
And I
one of those
yep,
themes is going to hit.
for sure. And I wanted to do it in a way like just like that. So it didn't seem didactic. It seemed natural, where there's those nuggets from the therapist, from her life experiences where she does face the fears. She does, she brings all her anxiety along with her while facing her fears, but it's not in a, they're sprinkled in throughout the narrative. So I wanted to
Yeah.
make it more fun, for the kid, right? Like here's a chapter book series versus like here's a workbook.
Yeah, and I think they're
um,
willing to read a book. If you have a reader, some kids are, or are okay to have you read it to them. I think it's just more palatable for some kids who are maybe even not wanting to work on or talk about anxiety. It's like, you don't have to, but let's just read this book. I know I did that
yeah,
with my kids for a while. Like like a whole bookshelf was full of, like, every book had a message.
that's
And I'm like,
good because they don't at a young age, they don't necessarily know that they're
they
getting a
don't.
message, but
Yeah.
they'll take it in. And it's good for younger kids too, or like, if you're worried that your kid has anxiety, but they're not talking about it, you can kind of use it as a conversation starter, right? You can be like,
Yeah.
well, this character is saying she's worried about these kind of things. Does that ever happen? That used to happen to me, to maybe get them to kind of open up.
It's a good
But
launching pad. Yeah,
it's a
for
good
sure.
launching pad. Yeah.
It's time we put help directly in our kids' hands. Introducing Crushing OCD course for kids and teens.
It was way more helpful than all the other therapy we've ever done because we didn't really know what to do. So we weren't really doing it before. So the course helped to figure out what the exposures are and how to do them.
We're not in therapy and find it really hard to find an ERP trained therapist here. So we're currently with like the public health service, but again, they don't seem to be trained in ERP. It's filled that gap that we don't have that was needed.
This was really well timed for us to use between therapists and to help us get off to a good start with this new practice.
It was easy to use. I was able to do it from my phone or also on the computer.
There's different ages, so there were younger kids, there were teenagers, and so that was really nice too, to have a variety of ages where it wasn't just geared towards younger kids or older kids. It was a nice variety.
It's helpful for our kids to hear it from this third party as opposed to just us saying it.
I really like the offense and defense method. I love working on poking at OCD while it's sleeping. It makes it a little bit easier to do, and it's kind of fun. I'm planning on using it to work on my fear of holding or touching batteries and stuff like that.
So it was really helpful, and I think a lot of other kids would like it. I thought that I was the only one who had worrying about the weather and stuff. And then there was somebody else on there who worried about the same thing, which was really helpful.
Seems less scary to work on stuff now that I've watched this class, and I'm more interested to work on it.
I like trying to do more exposures still, and before I wasn't, I just didn't want to do them.
I've worked on some of my bigger compulsions and been successful.
I realized that it was helpful to do the exposures. Before it was really, really hard. It's still hard, but it's helpful to know that I need to do them.
Before there would be a lot of battles about it. So it is definitely less loggerheads.
Really, really good course and super helpful.
Definitely would recommend this. It's really easy to follow. It's nice bite-sized videos. I really like the worksheets that go along with it, and I think it's really helpful.
To learn more about this course and register your child or teen, go to atparentingsurvivalschool.com.
And if your child does have anxiety, you can use Nellie. Nellie's the main character in the books. You can use Nellie as, I know Nellie felt that way too, or I wonder what Nellie would do in this situation. I mean, it could be kind of a great communication tool to use instead of oh, that's your anxiety bothering you, or what should you do with your anxiety? You can start to use this character as kind of like a role model.
Totally. Yeah. Or what would Dr. Niederberger say to Nellie?
Yeah.
What would he say?
Yeah. Or maybe they
right?
have their own doctor, like,
Of course,
and
absolutely.
that helps
Yeah.
normalize it too. Like, oh, well, she's got a doctor and now you have a doctor. And there's, again, that normalization because,
Yes, I think that's huge for kids. I really
yeah.
do. And because when I would treat kids, they would just be like, well, I didn't tell my friend I was here. I didn't,
Mhm.
well, what's up, whatever and I would try and sort of challenge that, everyone has doctors for different kinds of things. And, this, I think it's really brave, actually. I think it's a brave thing. I think it's really brave when a kid says, I'm struggling and I need help. So to get that, I think it's important as parents to really try and have these open conversations. So use the tools, books, like this to say, look, this is more common than you think.
Yeah.
And it is treatable too.
And I think that that's kind of conveyed in her ability to start to do things that were really hard. So
yes.
Are you going to write more? So there's two. There's the talent.
Yes, there's two right now. There's talent show trouble. And then so the talent show trouble, in the talent show trouble, she has symptoms of social anxiety disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, and then like a specific phobia because she really is petrified, which is like public speaking is the number 2 fear. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Do you know what the number 1 fear is?
No, tell me.
Death.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I lied. Public speaking is the number 1 fear.
Oh, really?
And number 2 is death. So public speaking is more scary to people. It's a
that also makes sense.
Yeah, it's a huge, and it has all these like existential underpinnings. Like I won't get into that, I'll bore you. But that's the first one. So she's worried about all different kinds of things, but the book is focused on really like, she's really petrified. She's a talent show and she has this funny parrot named Larry. And I put the parrot in because I'm obsessed with parrots. I'm trying to convince my family to get one, but they won't let me. So I love Larry the parrot. He kind of helps her. And she has this big talent show and she's petrified about it. So Dr. Niederberger like helps her in a very behavioral way, kind of what you would see on, through this program or anyone to treat anxiety is really learning step-by-step building like a fear ladder, a fear hierarchy. To face your fears really like one ladder, one step at a time. Like you don't jump in the deep end of the ocean. You start at the shallow end. So that's in the first book. In the second book, she develops a different specific phobia of dogs. Now, she still has all her worries. She's a highly anxious kid. So there's sort of anxious substrate. You have this anxious temperament, or you have this neurobiological predisposition. So you can have a trigger that can cause your anxiety to skyrocket. And she just gets chased by this big dog. Doesn't hurt her, but it unleashes this very debilitating phobia, which is also common. It could be anything with kids, whether it's a dog, heights, thunderstorm, anything. I once had a patient that had a phobia of perms, curly hair. I mean, it could be anything, flowers, anything that can remind somebody too of something traumatic. So if you're already anxious and then something triggers, it can unleash more anxiety. So she has to deal with that because her dog, she was supposed to train her grandparents' dog, Harry, for the dog Olympics. And she's a dancer. And if Harry wins the dog Olympics, she gets $500, which is a big deal. But she's frozen with fear. So what is she to do? So I won't give the answer away. But her friends come to help her supportive friends. Dr. Niederberger helps her. Larry helps her. Her family helps her. And, you get people, you got to build a support team, teachers, at school counselors are a great tool to use. They're very used to it, to helping kids if it's scared. And one character in the book is petrified of buses, getting onto the bus. And then Nellie ends up, learning what she has learned to help this other character in the book.
Yeah, and I love being able to pay it forward and feeling empowered to help other people. I like that.
Totally. So Nellie will grow up to be a psychologist. Yeah. But I don't think we'll get that far in the series.
You don't think so?
No, what's so interesting? They keep the kid, they want them to stay the same age.
Oh, really?
And I never realized that because I'm like, oh, well, she can go into middle school and she can, right? There's so many things that happen in middle school. But yeah, according to the publisher, and I didn't realize this, think about like Ramona and Bees, think about the Ramona series or all these series, they don't age.
No.
Maybe like a year.
I mean, you're trying to hit a certain age range. I guess that's the problem is like, once they start your book, you're going to have a whole bunch for the same age range. So
Right. It's like if they read one, oh, let's see what Nellie's up to next, So, I mean, maybe she can age a little bit, like a year or two, but I don't think we'll see her when she's an adult.
Probably not, I guess. She can just talk about that on career day.
Yeah. Right. Oh, good point.
Yeah. She'd be excited about it. So do you think you're going to do more?
Yeah. So Nellie, I don't know if I should give a teaser, but Nellie is part Italian. And in the next book, she needs to go to Italy. And she's never been out by herself, which is huge.
Wow.
She's only 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a big trip. She's very nervous to get on an airplane. She's nervous to be away from her family, to meet distant relatives. She's very picky about food.
Oh, that's a good one.
What's going to happen?
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. And then Nellie might go to overnight camp.
That'll be a good one too.
So, she's scared of the dark. These are very common fears. She's scared of nightmares. She has trouble falling asleep. What will happen when she goes to overnight? What will happen when she goes to Rome? Spoiler alert, it all works out. Because she uses all the techniques and she faces it. She doesn't avoid going to Italy. She doesn't avoid going to overnight camp. That's where I think these books and other tools help, right? Like you can have anxiety, but don't let that bully stop you. You say, listen, you are annoying and I really find you very irritating, but I'm just going to put you in my pocket and put you on my shoulder and let you yap away, but I'm still going to do this thing. I'm not going to let you ruin what I want to do, my goals, my values. I'm not going to let you get in the way, even though you're trying really, really hard.
Yeah.
You are a real fighter, but I'm going to be a stronger fighter.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like the stories convey that. Like that's the message that kids get with it being, more subtle. Yeah, I think that's the beautiful thing about your books is they can just get into the story and really fall in love with Nellie and fall in love with the character and get that message almost subconsciously. They're really, rooting for her. And
yeah, you are. You really want her to not be held back by all of her ants, automatic negative. Do you use the term ants, the automatic negative thoughts?
Yeah, I don't, but
sometimes
people
you don't want the noise, her anxiety to stop her. And there's times when you think, oh my God, is it going to stop her? But she learns, and I think, acceptance is a part of it, just accepting that, okay, you tend to be more anxious. You have an anxiety disorder that can really be debilitating at times and cause you distress and really aggravate you at times and really feel yucky. The physical part of it really feels awful, which we know, but let's, you don't have to accept in terms of like, oh, wow, this is fun. I really like this. It's more of like, this is what I have. So what am I going to do with it? Am I going to let it boss me around? No.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let it boss me around.
Yeah.
And that's where like reaching out for your supports helps. So somebody can help you. Your therapist can help you. Is a real, your cheerleader with you.
Yeah.
Can help you learn ways to, conquer your thoughts, your behaviors, and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
People can get Nellie and Knots on Amazon or probably wherever they buy their books. I will leave a link in the show notes and the description so that people can check both of those out. I think they're a great supplement to the anxiety journey. So thank you so much for coming on, and we'll stay tuned for more Nellie adventures in the future.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Well, I hope you found that helpful. Definitely check out her books. I will leave links to her books in the show notes. So you're looking for 2 books, and Nellie in Knots is the name of both of them. There is the talent show Trouble, and then the other one is the Dog Olympics. And stay tuned for more to come. It sounds like she's got some more cooking, which I think will be really exciting. Also, don't forget to check out my OCD workbook, Crushing OCD Workbook for Kids, 50 Fun Activities that use CBT and ERP. And so I will teach your kids clinically sound approaches. It is for kids ages 8 to 12, but a lot of wiggle room on both sides of that. And don't take advantage. That's the wrong message. Take advantage of this special offer that I'm doing for my book launch, which is gifting you access to my course, Crushing OCD for Kids and Teens, which is always $127 because it is worth so much more than that. It is really like 3 to 5, not even 3, I would say 5 therapy sessions in that course. And I don't know about you, but I'm paying a lot for therapy. So that is a lot of bang for buck. And you will get that course for free. Just purchase pre-order Crushing OCD Workbook for Kids and email us your receipt, and we will create a coupon code just for you to access that course for free. You'll have lifetime access for that, for taking advantage of this opportunity. And it helps me because it gets the book out there. It tells Amazon, hey, this book actually is really good and it's getting some good traction. And so it's a win-win. So I hope that you take advantage. I hope that you're enjoying the podcast. If you are, don't forget to hit a star or leave a review. You know, reviews are greatly appreciated. And for some reason, I haven't had any in a little while. And so maybe if you leave a review, I'll be reading yours next time. And most importantly, don't forget to find the sparkle in everything you do. And I'll talk to you again next Tuesday. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the AT Parenting Survival Podcast. To get additional support raising a child with anxiety or OCD, visit Natasha's online school of on-demand classes at atparentingsurvivalschool.com.